my job is to actually go and fix things. And whenever there's a design issue or a problem with the games, I'm called in and I form a team and we just jump on it and we solve the problem. And looking at it after the fact, a lot of the solutions are quite obvious and just a lot of common sense. As a designers, you need to use common sense very often. We learned several lessons, most of them in the hard way, the very hard way for some of them. But the first one was actually given to us pretty much on a silver platter. And that first lesson I'm passing on to you guys as kind of a karma cycle. And the way this first lesson was given to us was in a way that I think illustrates many things about the game industry and why it's kind of a neat and nice industry to work in. We had the chance to meet with the design leadership of a very popular and very successful MMO that I won't name. And we had a friendly chat because they knew we were starting an MMO and they wanted to give us a few pointers, that kind of a professional courtesy, which is kind of nice. And if you know the game industry, we all know each other pretty well. We kind of appreciate each other's work. So this kind of thing happened, which is actually quite great. One of the surprising things, and there were many surprising things about that particular lesson, is the first thing is that that meeting occurred to start with. And the second is that they actually answered a question when kind of casually we asked them, you know, between talking about various things, so what is the secret of your success? Because we're kind of interested in that. And they actually did answer, which was interesting. Now, I was expecting, if they were to answer at all, something maybe about, something deep about game design, maybe player retention or class balance, something quite crunchy like that. But what they ended up talking about was tools. And they did mention that they didn't mind telling us the secret of their success because they tell everyone and nobody ever listened to them and completely ignores the lesson. So try not to do that because it's a good one. And the lesson is that essentially you are not, I don't really like all this thing. Anyway, even though I put it there, you're not working enough on your game development, on development tools. You may think you have pretty good tools, but you should work more on them. And that's pretty valid for any kind of game. But if you think of it, an MMO is a pretty large project with a lot of content. And you're probably going to have several teams working on content in parallel. And let's say, several teams work on different planets at the same time. So if you can find one tool that a lot of people are using several times a day for a very long time, if you optimize that tool, you're going to get a lot of return on investment. You're really, really going to get, in the long run, a lot of benefit from optimizing that tool. So it saves time in the long run, but it's particularly worth doing because in any game project, there are times when there's a very hard deadline that you need to meet and you need to produce some content for that deadline. Let's say maybe there's an E3 demo and marketing just tells you like a week ago, you have something for that demo, right? And you have to produce something and maybe there's a gold master deadline you have to meet. And having really good tools will allow you to really show your creativity and create content quickly. But in an MMO, not only is that true during the development time, it's going to keep being true even after launch because you're going to have to keep produce content. So it's going to be critical. And the final kind of piece of truth they imparted to us is that if you're thinking of putting a new feature, a new shiny thing into your game, and that's going to require new tools, you have to think carefully. Would it be better to create those new tools or to use the same engineering time, making an existing tool for an existing task work better? So that was the lesson. You're not working enough on your tools and keep working at it. The second lesson, and the eighth one, we had to really learn the hard way. And we're still learning it, still the hard way. It's about communication. And there's something about MMO and anything you try to say or communicate with your fan base or your players about your product, you're going to get response that are a bit stronger than what you could be expecting for another kind of game. And whenever you say something, again, it's going to come back and bite you one way or another. And you just have to go into it with your eyes wide open that communicating about an MMO is a bit more complicated and you need to be much more careful about it. And the next lesson is trying to understand why that's the case. But regardless of why, this is something you have to deal with. So there's several communication strategy you may want to try. And I'm not saying that the one we picked at Bioware was the best one, but you would have to find one for your product. What we choose to do was to only talk about something once we were absolutely certain of how the feature would work, what it was going to look like, and then we go and talk about it to our customers. So we really wanted to avoid overcommitting and under-delivering. And we wanted, of course, having a policy is important, but you need to share it with your entire community of developers in any kind of communication, be it tweeting or their own Facebook account and so on, because every developer becomes a kind of representative of your game in the view of your players. But so really what was important for us was to only talk about things that we were sure we were going to have because we already tested it, and then to communicate it clearly. If you leave any kind of ambiguity about anything you say, you have to understand that that will be interpreted in various ways. If you're lucky, the public is going to be a bit pessimistic about it and understanding in a negative way, and then they will be pleasantly surprised once the feature is released. Well, that's unfortunate, but at least that's not so bad. If you're unlucky, they are going to interpret it in a very optimistic way, saying, oh, that feature that is coming is going to be amazing for all those reasons that are not quite true. When you do come up with a feature, they will be disappointed, they think you lied to them, and all kind of very interesting dynamics that you want to avoid. So if you do leave room for ambiguity in one of your communication, you should really get ahead of it. As soon as you see on your forum that people are interpreting it in a different way, you probably should go there and tell, well, actually what we meant is this. And sure, they will be disappointed, but they're going to be disappointed at some time. It's not going to get any better. You might as well go ahead and do that, straight away, rip the Band-Aid, let them know that, no, actually that feature is only going to be that much. As designers, we always try to understand how things work and why things are the way they are. And why is it about MMO that makes the communication so difficult? In Bioware, we had quite a few games. And for example, we had forums for Neverwinter Night, and they were quite friendly. There was a lot of very knowledgeable people giving out advice and helping new people get situated into the game and so on. And it was really a nice environment. And our forums for an MMO, for any MMO, not only Bioware's but others, are a bit more challenging, let's just say. And there must be a reason why this is a kind of a general thing. And I have a theory. It's probably wrong, but at least it's something to start working on. And my understanding is that what makes MMO a bit special, like everybody who's a fan of this genre, knows that playing such a game feels different and is a lot more interesting, but it feels different, feels almost real, the kind of interaction you have there. If you think about it, whenever you achieve something in a massively multiplayer game, you have other human beings witnessing what you've done, witnessing your achievement, and kind of validating it by saying, yeah, you've done that, there's value in what you've done. And so you're not only going to build social network, you're going to have this kind of peer validation that, and I believe that deep inside the human mind, this kind of artificial achievement in a virtual world cannot be distinguished from a real achievement in the real world. And so if you combine that with the amount of time people spend in an MMO, building up this relationship, achieving things, and not being able to distinguish them from the real thing, they are going to really become extremely invested. If anything is to threaten the game in their mind, it's going to be perceived not only as a threat to the game, but as a form of existential threat, because something that is very close and dear and real to them is under threat. And we all know how human beings react to this kind of existential threat with a lot of passion, energy, and sometimes aggressivity. What I'm saying is that the very things that make those games particularly good also make the communication around them particularly prickly. If you ever had any kind of emotional argument with someone, let's say your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, you know that you can talk about the fact of the argument, but you're never going to solve anything if you don't solve the subtext of the argument. You know, we never really argue about what we are talking about, but about something else we did or said or didn't do or didn't say. And until you address both the fact, the superficial matter of the argument, and the subtext, you're never going to go anywhere. For example, if you're discussing a change you're about to make, like a nerf, a change to an ability or a class or something, you know, you think that the argument is just about that. But the subtext is that maybe the player thinks you don't know what you're doing. It's a very common perception that the dev are, you know, out of touch or just not that competent. And that's very normal because your players only see a very small portion of the entire picture. You have actually, hopefully, it's not a knee-jerk reaction, but there's a long series of thinking that went into making a change, a lot of data that you analyze, and then you come to the conclusion you need to make a change. But all they see is a last part that might actually be counterintuitive. What I'm saying is, if you have to communicate such a thing, you may want to also address the subtext that you know what you're doing. And if you explain the entire logic to the players, they may not agree with it. So they may not agree with the main argument, but you're actually addressing the competency subtext. And when you do that, you actually will diffuse a lot of the aggressivity of issue with that nerf, and people will still not agree with you. They still will be disappointed that their class is not doing as well now, but it will be done in a much more rational way. I think that sometimes we consider the multiplayer aspect, the massively multiplayer aspect of MMO as another feature. I think it's not only a feature, it's a very core of the game. Again, because what makes this game good is the fact that they feel real, and they feel real for the reason we've discussed. So the interesting thing about that is there's a lot of social element that you can take from real life and apply them to your game, because I believe that the social interaction in an MMO are undistinguishable from the social interaction in the real world. So here's an example. I like to read, I know. But even though reading at home is pretty nice, I have an espresso machine and comfortable sofa, I find myself enjoying more taking a book and going to a public place, be it the beach, a park. We don't have Tim Hortons in Texas, unfortunately, so a Starbucks, let's say. And why do that? And I think it's because we're very much still social animals. And we crave social interaction. So we go to social space. But then from childhood, we've been taught to not talk to strangers, right? We have that lesson in high school, or whatever the equivalent, where you quickly understand that talking to other people can be quite painful, and you can be ridiculed and all that kind of things. Maybe you had a different childhood. But anyway, so we crave social interaction, and we go in a space where it can happen, but then we don't do the last step, which is to actually talk to people. And of course, you know where I'm going to. A lot of people play MMOs because, hey, there are other players. But they don't talk to the other players because maybe it's weird. You don't know if the guy wants to talk to, if it's, don't know if the girl wants to talk to, if it's a guy playing a girl, all that stuff. If you have a dog, you know that it's probably the best way to meet other people. And if you're single, you should get a dog. It totally works. And the reason is dogs are very social, just like us. But unlike us, they don't have any social inhibition. So they see another dog, they're going to go and greet it. It's going to be a mess with both leash being, kind of stuck. And at that point, it's silly not to talk to the other guy. In fact, to the other person. It's socially acceptable to strike a conversation because your dog kind of provided they broke the ice, if you want. Or something like it. I really don't like this clicker thing. And we provided a few different ways, and I'm only going to go through one, in the game to provide the same kind of concept of breaking the ice, initiating the conversation. And once you do that, well, people will probably take it from there and become social and really enjoys an MMO the way it should be, which is with other players, because that's how it becomes real. That's how you get your peer validation. For example, we created a buff. Every class gets one at level 1. It costs no energy. You can do while running, so you don't even have to stop. There's literally no cost to you. And the hope was people would just see another player, give them the buff, and just continue. And once in a while, the other player would actually say thank you. And that's it. You know, you broke the ice. It's totally okay, because the other guys started talking to say, you're welcome, and by the way, are you doing that quest or this quest? You know, as game designers, you need to build in reward to multiplayer, be it through special quests or any kind of different ways. Some of them are described here, so that people are incentivized to groups, and they're going to still be shy about creating one, but through all the mechanics like the buff, you're going to make it talk to each other, and then they might as well go and form a group and get the benefit of it. Because that's what's going to make your game really sticky. So that's the light side of social interaction. There's a dark side, and I used to have a slide about it, but I put it out. But of course, whenever we talk about social and interaction in MMO, we have to talk about griefing. And yeah, one slide was not going to cut it. And it would be a very interesting talk to have. I think griefing is more of the most interesting emergent behavior in MMOs. But I'd rather wait at least a year until we have 1 year of experience through a service to see how this particular MMO is going to, how is that going to emerge in our game and what we do about it. I'm sure there's a lot of those simple but hard lessons to learn on that we're going to find out the hard way. Speaking of griefing and strong emotion like that, there is one that is very powerful. It's in the Sith code, actually. But anyway, there's one that you can really harness to make your game better. And that is anger. Anger is extremely powerful motivator. Shame is good. Anger is better. Both at the same time, it's not bad. And I don't mean that for your player. If you're making your player angry, that's an interesting game mechanic, but anyway, maybe another time. But I'm speaking about your developers. It's very valuable to make your developers angry. So let me talk about that a little bit. So be angry at themselves, of course, because as developers, whether you make a tool for other developers, or you make a system or a quest or something like that, you make mistakes once in a while. I know, it's shocking. But you will introduce bugs. And while you could be a little bit upset about it, if you play the game, or you read the forum, God forbid, you're going to be fully exposed to what you have been doing to people. That bug is impacting other people. And you get this shame/anger at yourself, like, I'm telling you that if you do that, you're going to go fix your games really quickly. And you're very extra motivated to do so if you invite your friends and family to play. So it looks like it's a nice thing when you say, friends and family can come and play the game. You know, now they can finally see what you've been doing for 5 or 6 years. But it's also a secret motivation thing, because once your spouse gets stuck on the quest, you're going to hear about it. And be super motivated to go and fix it straight away. So harness anger and shame and make it a positive force to fixing the game super fast. That totally works. Now, something that is related to passion and the fact that you're going to go and make the game better, and passion and anger, of course, are related. And that's what I call cool stuff, which are maybe things in your game that are not entirely needed, but it really delights the player. It's something that when they use it, it's something new or a very nice twist. And you know, your Metacritic score will go up, your subscription score will go up, everybody's happy. And obviously, you want a lot of that, you know, in your games. Example in the Old Republic would be the holocom system, when you can join a conversation remotely and all kind of the multiplayer conversation, little things like that that are not entirely necessary, but does make the game better. And you know, the question is, what's the recipe to make sure you have a lot of those things in your game? Well, of course, you can think really hard as designer and write down all the plan, and like, oh, I've got a cool one, and you write it down, you make the mock-up, and it's great. This being said, at some point during normal working hours, this is what's happened. Oops. You work, you have some meetings, of course, a lot of them. You reply to emails, you have to schedule everything. And when you schedule a game, you work on the core technology, you work on foundations before you can work on the cool, maybe fluffy features. And when you schedule, we tend to push backward those cool features back and back. And game design is a lot about tough decisions. You will have to cut a lot of things that you want to put in the game, but you need a certain discipline if you want to ship one day. Unfortunately, while definitely you plan for them, a lot of the cool stuff is not going to make it into your game unless you look at another source of time you could maybe work on the game. And that's nights and weekends, which fortunately are a lot more unrestricted. Nobody's going to tell you what to work on first because you're not paid for it. It's not strictly scheduled and so on. So I think that's where a lot of the cool stuff comes from. And so if I have to, I hate this thing, if I have to make a recipe for having a lot of this thing in the game, that would be the following one. You need a very healthy project. Because let me tell you, if your project is in trouble, your night and weekend are not going to spend on cool stuff. It's going to be spent on getting the game back on track. And even if you manage to find some time to work on cool stuff, like, I don't know, you forego sleeping altogether, your effort will not be appreciated because people will be like, why did you work on that fluff features instead of helping us putting the game back on track? And that's a fair question. So you need a healthy project. And then you need a person that is a bit weird because instead of going out with their friends, playing music, watching movies, the fun, things they want to do on a weekend is to take that feature that used to be in the game, plan, and put it back in there by themselves. So you need a special motivated person. You need that person to have a very broad knowledge because let's say there's a feature you really, really want to go in the game. And unfortunately, you need a programmer and maybe a VFX guy and a sound guy would be good. And there's only so many beers you can buy to your friends so that they work on the weekend on your crazy idea. It might work once. The next weekend, might get a different answer. So on the other hand, if you have good tools, which we've seen are important, and you have the knowledge necessary to not only work on the art part, but on the programming part and the design issue by yourself, well, it's going to be a lot easier. You need a lot of attention to details. That person, that motivated person, cannot leave any edge case. If they make a prototype and that prototype can crash the server or corrupt the character or crash the economy, it's not going to be very well received, surprisingly enough. So thinking of all the edge cases and addressing them before even presenting your particular cool feature for review is going to be absolutely key. And finally, the most important of all, you understand what should be done in the game and what should absolutely not be done in the game. And the fine line, it's a lot of gut feelings, but that's the most important of them all because there truly is a fine line between creating a cool feature that is going to, again, really increase the game success and creating some kind of buggy mess that's going to be a source of exploit and be a very, very poorly received feature. So these two people, the loose cannon and the company heroes, are very similar. Both of them are motivated. They have both knowledge. They have tools. And maybe not attention to detail and not understanding limits. So that motivated person with all those qualities is going to be so important to your project that the last lesson, really, is about hiring. Because you want to find those people, and they are going to become the backbone of your company. Because they are the kind of guys that you give them the ball, they run with it. You don't have to worry about something else. They have the self-motivation necessary to succeed and drive your game forward. So the hiring, and this is more for us who are doing a lot of hiring, you have to take it really seriously. If you're like me, sometimes half an hour before the interview, you're given the resume, you read it while walking to the interview room, you talk to the guy for half an hour, and you're like, he's nice. That's not very useful. The interview process at Bioware, especially Bioware Edmonton for designers, was absolutely brutal. And I think that was a great thing. They put you under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and because, you know what, our job has a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and if you break the interview, well, oh well, you're not going to make it. So that's something that I recommend you do, and again, if it doesn't feel cruel and unusual, just do it wrong. All of this put together come into a bonus lessons, and that's about you. If you're one student that is looking to break into the game industry, or maybe you're thinking you're already in the game industry and you're wondering how to succeed in your job and rise in the rank and be recognized, well, the truth is we, on our side, are constantly looking for those star employees, or those star candidates. What we want is a few things. So first, do not despair, because a lot of what I talk about those star people is not necessarily inherent. You know, the passion for games, that's something you need to be born with. It's not something you're going to work on. But spending time, having a discipline about broadening your knowledge, and instead of going out on a Friday night, just opening a programming book and learning new tricks, is something that is not quite acquired for some of us. But you know, with discipline, you can really make it into a habit. So you might need to make some adjustment to fit that profile. But if you do, and if you can prove it to your future employer, then they'd be literally crazy not to hire you. And so you'll find it a lot easier than you think to actually see your dreams come true. By proving it, you know, you can just talk during an interview, but that won't cut it. One of the things I really like at the Vancouver Film School that I visited yesterday was the concept of this project that you get to work on by yourself with your colleagues, with your friends. And that really allows us to judge not only what you can do, but how you come to think about game design or game programmation and so on. So we have really something to judge you on, and you have something to prove your competency. And the part about being self-taught, that's just true. Yeah, a company will give you a certain amount of training, but it's kind of pointing you towards the computer where the tool set is on. Sometimes there's a bit more guidance, but it's just giving you the tools. All the hard work still need to come from yourself. If everything is self-taught from now on, you might as well start straight away. And anything you do extra, anything that you learn that is beside your core competency will always come into play one way or another, and in surprising ways. But this is what's going to make the difference. And the more you can prove it, the more you have a concrete result you can show to your employer, or once you're in the company, to your superior, the more we will be able to realize you are one of the star employees. And then it will be really easy. The way it feels, and that's a super cheesy quote, actually I wrote it, it's super cheesy, that's from a book called The Alchemist, and that's, it feels like it's almost magical. The entire universe is conspiring to make you succeed as long as you know what you want. And then you work on it. You have the passion for it, you just do the few necessary steps, and then it just happens. And it's just not magic, it's just the fact that on the other side, the people running those companies are literally right now looking for people like you. So that's it for the talk, but all kind of obvious things. I will now open it to question and answer. Yes, please.
Can you go into more detail about the cruel and unusual processes of Bioware?
That would be telling, right?
Yeah.
At the time, and I think it's changing a little bit, we were very lucky at that time, or unlucky for me, that we had a tool set that was widely available. Neverwinter had just been released, and so people were asked to submit us a module, You know, complete adventures, you needed to put a puzzles, a conversation, and so on and so forth. And although I know from my friend Georg that only spent about 3 days on it and just sent it and got the job, I spent like 3 months of mine, like, you know, every night work on it obsessively until it was this gigantic sprawling adventure. So, so it took all I had, all I knew, and I put it in there, and I sent it, and like, oh, that's pretty cool. Then you have the interview, and then you think, yeah, that was cool. But then they're like, hey, here's a computer. Like, okay. And I say, it's Friday night, so we'll see you Saturday night. Like, okay. You know that little module? Just make another thing different, of course, but, you know, just as good. And you got tonight, and like, see you on Saturday. And you're like, well, okay then. And you have to do this thing that took you months in literally hours during the night. So I called my wife saying, I think I'm not quite coming home tonight. Just visit that city by yourself, right? And this kind of pressure is something you can expect in the game industry, like all the time. It's not something that, so if you break and just like break down completely, which happens to quite a few interviewees, well, that's not a very good sign. And of course, we can't do that anymore because, you know, of legal reason. And, no, because, you know, it's not a tool set that is widely acceptable and so on. But for all the other game company, if you are, you know, if you have a game that is moddable or a game with a tools editor and so on, anything, well, people can go and prove their worth, I would definitely recommend something similar to that. Sure.
I was also I was a very avid modder for Neverwinter Nights, so I'd be interested to hear, you know, what kind of things you created and, you know, what was your experiences working with Neverwinter, the Aurora tool set, and just a little bit on that.
It was a fantastic tool set, and I wish even, you know, the tool set on the Old Republic was a bit more like it. Just the scripting language was great, and if you didn't know it, it was kind of like a C-like language, but with command like move to or attack or use a spell. So it was great to develop. When I started playing, you know, Neverwinter Night, and there was a tool set, I decided I would make like an inn, like a taverns. Then I realized there was like 50,000 taverns software, like mod out there. So apparently everybody, that was the first idea they had. So that didn't work. But I played the game and I was a bit, you know, upset that when you kill the monster, it would just disappear, it would just blink and just leave a loot bag on the floor. That was a bit gamey. So one of the things I worked for a few weeks was creating a mod that actually left bodies that you could loot, and there was quite a lot of complexity to that. There was like a garbage collectors to clean things that was actually a monster coming and cleaning up the corpse eventually. And I was very lucky that that software, that little piece of technology was picked up for one of their modules. So I was contacted by Bioware saying, hey, can we use that? I'm like, sure, let's talk. But for my modules, I did some trick that the designers of the game didn't think was possible. For example, one of the environments just blew up, and then there was a huge hole you could go down into. That was not possible in the game engine. And recently we had recently, 4 years ago, we had a guy that submitted a module in Neverwinter Night, and we looked at it, and it was the same thing. We looked at it and we were like, this is not possible. How? We hired the guy straight away. It was a crazy, he implemented a dead or alive beach volleyball game with the camera and everything, and we're looking at it and we're like, it just can't be done. And you know, when the designers of the games you're applying to are scratching their heads, thinking like, how the hell? You pretty much have a job slot, which is interesting because in many ways we want you to be almost like hacker that take something and do things that are not designed for it at all. Then we hire you and we say, please never do that again. Because you know, a game, an MMO need to be extremely stable, and if you're subverting the tools, then you're probably going to do something that worked for a while, then the programmers fix something, optimize something, and it just stop working. So it's like, oh, you can do all those things, great. Yeah, don't do it. That answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Yep. Yeah, it did.
All right. I should have brought t-shirts to give people for questioning. It's a great motivator. Please.
You had touched briefly on some of the social engineering related to friending and griefing.
Sure.
I would be very interested in hearing some more details on that.
Well, we did a few things. One is to remove any pain from making a friend, right? If like, I really like that guy, he's very helpful as a tank or whatever it is, and let me friend him, and you go to the sub-menu, then you shift clicks, and you open another menu, and then you go down a list. Halfway there's a guy logged off, and okay, that didn't happen. Or you just lost interest, and it's a general principle that you should, if you want people to do something, you should make it really easy. So for example, and I'm not sure we actually didn't invent it, other people did it before. In other games, though, other genre, if you finish a quest, while group, we say, hey, you finished that quest with that guy and you're not friend yet, would you like to be a friend? Or when you click on another characters, if he's not in your group, right on his portrait there's a big plus sign, so you can invite him to a group again, so it's not a deep down in a menu. So that's basic things. The other side of it is incentivizing grouping. And what I call bonus quest is we have the concept of bonus quest, which is a different idea. But every time you complete one in a group, anybody complete it in your group, you get experience from their bonus quest. So you're getting experience at a different rate that is a bit faster. And so you have incentivized to help a guy doing a quest that you're not even on because you're going to get some of that splash XP. And again, MMO are a bit weird in the sense, again, people play them a lot as single-player games, and you need to provide this. It's very important because the player doesn't always have the times to invest into creating a group. And if everything requires a group, one day they will log in thinking they only have half an hour, they can't form a group, they log off and they never come back because they can't play the game when they want to play the game. But this being said, our job as designer is to always and constantly, subtly, tempt the player into grouping, because we know that grouping is more fun. That's the way the game should be experienced, but we provide solo options. But we really always constantly show you the reward for grouping, have the quest for grouping, and all that other incentive to remind you, are you sure you don't want to group? No, you sure you don't want to group? And keep at it.
Just talking about tools and how you guys should always iterate on them. How are the tools right now in Old Republic, and where do you guys want to take them?
Sure. If you ask the guy using them, they say the tools are total crap. But it's not the truth, because if you look at it from another perspective, and people will always have like, really total crap? Yeah, like that icon here, like, okay, that's minor. But no, I was talking with other people from other games, and they were telling me of how long it would take them to put a new ability into the game. It would like take weeks and so on. I'm like, oh, really? Because it took me about 1 minute to create a completely new ability, attach an effect to it and balance it with the final math and just throw it into the game. That's how long it takes. So I was like, oh, no, we have really good tools. But you're never done. Again, if like the world building tools, the spawn editors, the quest editors, they are really good. They allow you to create complex quests with a few clicks, but they can be better. And that's kind of the lesson. Sure.
So yesterday you talked about how you were brought on to work on the combat system.
Sure.
So how did you go about creating it, or, creating it, and how did you communicate it then to the team?
Sure. So a lot of the work has already been done, but playing a class from, let's say, 1 to 10, the powers didn't really support each other. You take 2 powers and mathematically you compare them, they do the same thing, and you're like, why would I use one versus the other, and all those things. So you had to, it's a lot of gut feelings, and you keep playing, and that's a general rule for designer, I think. You play something, and you play it, with your player's hat, and you try to find all the little things that you frustrate you, or the little pain point, or the things that you wish work that way, and then you make another pass. So you write it down, then you make the tweak, and then you play it again until it feels right. And it's a very touchy-feely process. There's very good process to balance the numbers and the math and so on, but that comes after. First, you have to play with an agent and thinking, okay, I've got the cover system. What do I want to do with the cover? What is my character about? And so the things I did for the agent, for example, was creating the concept of a bomb that you can put on the enemies ahead of time, and then the things that you shoot at and explode and all that stuff. But again, it's a process of playing, understanding what would frustrate you as a player and realize whether it's a good kind of frustration, which is useful, or if it's something that actually is not part of the game and you'd like to fix. And that is true for a combat class. It's true for any other, like right now I'm working a little bit on the auction house, and it's not very difficult to find little frustration playing. And like, oh yeah, I wish it was different. Well, wait, I'm in charge of that, so we should do something about that. And it's a general iteration process, and you just move from playing as a players and then thinking as a developers, and you keep iterating.
Thanks.
One more question. Sir.
There's an adage in industry in many businesses, a leopard never changes his spots. Once you see a person's tendencies, they are such a way. So many industries have psychoanalytical tests, Myers-Briggs, different types of testing for getting that analysis of people they interview, referring back to your presentation, which on my comment was fabulous. But in regards to the interview process, is there aspects that the industry looks at as far as, is there Myers-Briggs used? Are there certain profiles that you look for that resonate with the industry more so it enables not only the industry to filter more appropriately, but many of these young candidates in this room, that they can start to understand, am I really cut for this game?
I would like to answer yes with a straight face, but you're giving us more credit than we have. Most of the interview process is literally you talk to the guy like, yeah, it's kind of nice. And I wish we were more professional than that, and that's kind of a plea for us to take the whole interview process, a bit further, and we do that sometimes, and it's, a lot of programmers have like whiteboard tests and so on, but it's not a science yet for sure. Maybe that's a good thing. I'm not sure I would trust. Like in the 80s, they were big about polygraph. You write and they look at your handwriting like, yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be a leader. Like, really? You did that? That was crap. So I'm a big believer in testing. At Bioware, I think it's the same across the game industry. We don't really look at your credential that much. I mean, we do if it's relevant. Oh, you work on that game, or you made that indie game. That's great. Your bachelor degree or whatever. This is not relevant. Like, can you do the job or not? And regardless of who you are, if you have the talent and the personality, you need to work. I did write the veto rules, which is something we used to have. It has a less polite term that we use, but I cannot pronounce it. And it's like, there are people that are great. Like, you can see the technical expertise, but the personality, is not there. And we don't want prima donna. We don't want people that are not going to play well. It's a very collaborative environment, and therefore you need the skills, and I'd like us to really measure you on that. And then you need the personality, which is just you're a nice person in general. But yeah, all those tests, that sounds good, but maybe I should talk to you more. I think that was the last question, really? Oh. Really, sorry. Okay, all right then. Thank you very much.